I want to bring in my next guest. We are joined with a man I always appreciate having conversations with, Laith Marouf. He's an award-winning multimedia producer and broadcasting law consultant. Laith, my man, how you doing? You doing all right today?
Doing good, doing fine. I'm just a little bit of sick, but I'm glad to see Wilmer there. I love the guy.
Yeah, Wilmer is cool people. He's good people. He was with me on the radio station. He's been always cordial and nice to me, so I've always appreciated him. I want to get into something. So Trump, of course, came up with the idea we need to get rid of the Palestinians for Palestine. All of the countries in the Middle East freaked out. This is outrageous. What are you talking about? You can't do this. And so alternate plans were being made. Sisi in Egypt did not come to Trump's invite. The King of Jordan did. Sisi, however, was apparently working his own plan. And this was a $20 billion regional contribution. Their thinking is Trump is transactional. And because Trump is transactional, this will be something that he would most likely accept. They would come to some level of agreement on what they want to do. Part of this, however, interestingly enough, is that somehow they're going to keep Hamas out of power and coming up with some kind of group that is going to, I guess, lead or control Gaza going forward. Now, I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know how you say, hey, these people are not going to be part of the negotiation when this is the power center and these are the people who were elected. And if they have new elections, Hamas would also probably win those new elections. So give me your overall take on this plan. I guess the first thing is it feasible for them to even go through with a plan like this?
Yeah, obviously, Trump's plan is unimplementable. It's a war crime, obviously, and a crime against humanity to ethnically cleanse an indigenous people from their land. And what is being proposed here by Egypt and the other Arab vessels is partially also unimplementable. They can bring in equipment and reconstruction materials, but they definitely cannot rule the Palestinians. The Palestinians have shown for 100 years that they are ungovernable by foreign powers. They are sovereigns by themselves without even having a territory or a vote at the United Nations. Every Palestinian in the world, by the way, is the most sovereign, most free person on this planet, because we go head to head with the superpowers, let alone the little vassals that are occupying us regionally. So I don't think Egypt can achieve what Israel couldn't achieve or what the United States couldn't achieve, which is to break the will of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people will revolt against anybody that tries to govern them by force and not give them the right to self-representation.
So one of the things that is in the plan is this part, and this goes to your point about governable or governability. It says the Arab proposal, mostly based on Egypt's plan, involves forming a national Palestinian committee to govern Gaza without Hamas involvement and international participation in reconstruction without displacing the Palestinians abroad. So the thought being, well, we're not telling them to move. We're not going to evict anybody. We're not going to ethnically cleanse the area. The Palestinians are going to be there. We're going to put in $20 billion for reconstruction. And on top of the $20 billion, we're going to create a Palestinian committee to govern Gaza. Now, I guess on that one, the devil's in the details. What does it mean by a Palestinian committee? And what happens if the people who are, I would imagine, voted into that committee are members of Hamas? Like, that's the part that is blowing me away with this plan. They're acting as if, well, Hamas is not going to be part of the governing organization in Gaza. Okay, but if you have votes, the same people who were part of Hamas may be now part of this governing committee. I guess my thing is, I don't know how you're going to stop that from taking place, short of imposing leadership. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, this is what they basically did in the West Bank with the imposition of Mahmoud Abbas for the last decade and a half. Obviously, right now, we can look at the West Bank. Is Mahmoud Abbas able to govern the Palestinian people that are resisting in armed resistance against the occupation and confronting even his collaborationist class? No, he can't govern even a few neighborhoods in Ramallah where the upper class that is dependent on Western funding live with him. Even within that upper class of the Palestinians in Ramallah, there's a revolt against him. So how are they, who are they going to bring to govern the Palestinians from within the Palestinian people? Nobody can if they don't have the legitimacy from the people. And surely if there is a democratic election in Palestine, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the PFLP, the DFLP, they will win 99% of the seats. Actually, Fatah will cease to exist if there is a election right now, because people are fed up with the collaborationist class. And look at another thing that is happening right now in the West Bank is Mahmoud Abbas right now cut off all the salaries to the families of martyrs, people that were killed by the Israelis, and their retirement funds and so forth. And this is now already creating a revolt, because many of those people are not just Hamas or Islamic Jihad, but Fatah members that got killed by Israel over the last 60 years. So we're seeing a collapse of even Fatah and the Palestinian Authority. There is no way that Mahmoud Abbas, his class, and or the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis can govern Gaza. And if the Egyptians try to come into Gaza and or the Jordanians militarily, they'll get their behind handed to them. Definitely, the Egyptians haven't fought a war since 1973. The Jordanians haven't fought a war since 1967. So their militaries are just
paper tigers,
unable to do even whatever Israel tried to do.
One of the other things that came out, Al Jazeera is reporting this, that Hamas has offered to release all of the hostages for a full ceasefire. Basically, they're pushing for a deal. It says earlier Hamas proposed exchanging all Israeli captives and Palestinian prisoners in, quote, one go, unquote, during the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal, with all aim in reaching a permanent truce and a full Israeli pullout. Do you think there's any chance of that Israel would accept that, given that Donald Trump is president at this point and seems to be completely obsequious to whatever they want?
It's pretty kind of hard to predict what's going to happen. We look at how Trump is right now, kind of drowning in the talks about the Ukraine and his economic warfare with China and his split with Europe and Canada and whatever it is. These are huge files that are probably even more in the priority ladder on top of what's happening in Palestine. So while Trump is giving these signals that he will do anything that Israel wants, if Israel and its crazy acts destabilize any of his other files, I think Israel will find itself being abandoned somehow. So I'm not fully sure of that, but this is what part of the problem that probably the Israelis themselves are having. Nobody can predict really what Trump wants to do, and it's part of his strategy to keep everybody on their toes. And so I don't know where this is going to go, but the Zionists want to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. The Zionists want to kill as many Palestinians as possible. They know that if 1 year from today, the Palestinians are still in Gaza and the West Bank at the same population size, there ceases to be a Zionist colony. There's no way this is going to continue. The end of the Zionist colony is written on the wall.
Can we get into the West Bank for a bit? Gaza has been taking up a huge amount of, let's say, bandwidth, meaning people have been paying attention to Gaza. They have been ignoring what Israel has been doing in the West Bank. What is Israel doing in the West Bank? Just so to give the audience a full-throated understanding of the crimes that they're committing in that region.
Yeah, the reporters of Free Palestine TV are on the ground covering the attacks by the Zionists on the major cities in the north of the West Bank, Jenin, Tul Kerem, and Nablus, where the Israelis have besieged those cities for now almost a month and have been attacking the refugee camps in those cities, the Jenin refugee camp, the Nur Shams camp, and the Tul Kerem camp. And they have depopulated those refugee camps. Right now, there's around 100,000 Palestinians that have been expelled from those three cities that are now homeless, internally displaced. This is the largest wave of displacement in the West Bank since the 1967 war. And they are carpet bombing these refugee camps and blowing up whole neighborhoods at a time. So the refugee camps in those three cities are now resembling very much so the situation in Gaza in terms of mass destruction, and or in South Lebanon in the villages that Israel blew up over the last 60 days. So this is a big story. Nobody's covering it in the West. You can go to freepalestine.video to watch all the content that we're producing from the ground. And our journalists are now under attack because of this work, because nobody else is doing this work. Three of our journalists were attacked by Israeli military forces and their equipment destroyed. Help by donating so we can buy equipment for these journalists when you go to the website freepalestine.video.
And just so the audience will know, freepalestine.com is the site that you work with. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, freepalestine.com is the site that you work with. And to your point, they have effectively been trying to depopulate the West Bank. Do you think that Netanyahu is under this belief that Donald Trump would support him in this ethnic cleansing campaign for the West Bank and in Gaza, which is the reason why Israel has stepped up their attacks in the West Bank? And to your point, I don't know if Trump is going to back this. I mean, he's a wild card. You're absolutely right. He's been taking on the world. He's decided to have a tariff war with the rest of the world. He has been browbeating Europe, or at the very least going after Europe, sending J.D. Vance to have that conversation. He's trying to end the war in Ukraine. He is all over the place. And so whether he focuses his energies on the Middle East, who knows, right? But that's secondary to what Israel might have thought Trump would allow. And I guess the catch is, do you think they're going to be able to do that? I mean, they're effectively trying to ethnically cleanse the West Bank on this, on the silent, on the sly. Do you think they're doing that because they thought Trump would back them in doing it? I mean, to be fair, he did try to ethnically cleanse Gaza and the West Bank. He just got told no. And so,
yeah, look, the Israelis have watched for 16 months the great powers, the Western, coalition empire, let them do whatever they want to, genocide, ethnic cleansing, mass destruction. And they had full cover legally and diplomatically at the United Nations, at the courts by these powers. And at the same time, they watched China and Russia do nothing but talk. Right. China and Russia were condemning Israel, but they were not supplying the other side with weapons like the West was supplying endless amount of weapons to the Israelis. They didn't provide air defenses to Lebanon as the U.S. Provided air defenses for the Israelis. So if I was Netanyahu or, a Zionist in control, I would be even more emboldened, of course. Right? The Palestinians, the Arabs, the Muslims are left by themselves to fend for themselves. The only thing that we can get as from China or Russia or the rest of the world is just talk of support. And that doesn't change the reality on the ground. What changes the reality on the ground is force. This is what it is. Now it's all about who has the force to create facts. And so Netanyahu is definitely more emboldened, and but I don't know. Look, I personally want Netanyahu, as a Palestinian, I want Netanyahu to try to expel the Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank. I want that to destabilize the two vassal states, Jordan and Egypt, who have provided security for the Israelis for the last half a century, and were a blockage in the way of armed resistance against this project. If there's one Palestinian that is expelled from the West Bank into Jordan, there will be an uprising. There may even be a military coup. Similarly, in Egypt, there may be a military coup the minute one Palestinian is expelled into Egypt. So let the crazies do what they want. We live in a crazy world, and the only thing that works, it seems like, is being crazy.
You got to go into that. Dig into that for me. Why would, let's say, one Palestinian, and I know you're being hyperbolic, but why would one Palestinian either deported into the West Bank or, for the matter, into Jordan, destabilize those governments? Explain, flesh that out for the audience for me.
So right now, Jordan is around 70% of the population of the Jordanians that have Jordanian citizenship are originally from Palestine. So already you have a dynamic inside the country that is very touchy. The original Jordanian tribes are not happy about what's happening. And if there's a flow of more Palestinians from the West Bank has around 3 million Palestinians. If they are expelled, there'll be the majority. Jordan will become Palestine, basically. And the Jordanian original tribes will lose any say in the government and the direction of the state. And that contract between the king, the Hashemite ruling family, and the original Jordanian tribes will cease to exist. And therefore, not only the Palestinians will take advantage of the moment and overthrow the king, but also the Jordanian tribes who will see that the king is useless to protect their interests in the state, and they will also revolt. So there will be no more, not one sector of society in Jordan will be satisfied with that situation, and therefore it will be the end of the state of Jordan. Similarly, in Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula is sparsely populated. If you expel the Palestinians from Gaza into Sinai, they will become the majority. Basically, Sinai will become a Palestinian territory. And the Egyptian government will lose control of the Suez Canal. Sinai is so huge, by the way, that if there is Palestinian resistance inside Sinai, it's impossible to stop it. What are you going to hunt them in every cave and every mountain and every valley? It's impossible. So the expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza into Egypt will trigger a revolt inside the Egyptian military, mainly, who see themselves as the rulers of the country, and see that the Sinai Canal and the Sinai Peninsula are the shield and the main economic factor for the country. Without Sinai, Egypt will fall.
Can we go to Hezbollah for a bit? Hezbollah has taken the brunt of the Israeli military's attack in Lebanon. And right now, there's a new president, there's a new government in Lebanon. What is the status of Lebanon currently? I haven't heard a huge amount coming out in regards to, I know there's still been attacks, but I haven't necessarily heard a huge amount has been coming out of Lebanon. What is the status of Hezbollah currently in Lebanon?
So yesterday was the extended deadline for Israeli withdrawal from the south of Lebanon,
right?
February 18th, and they withdrew from all towns and villages. They maintained 5 hills that they are controlling outside these villages. They're strategic hills that overlook some of the south of Lebanon and also the Zionist colonies in the north of Palestine. We saw the return of all those villagers over since yesterday, and there was even a joyous moment where 5 different Hezbollah fighters emerged from within the rubble in those villages, still alive, and the Israeli military that was occupying these villages were not able to find them. So you could imagine this, how much of a failure it is for the Israelis. The other thing that this, brought into question is that how many other Hezbollah fighters were killed in these villages over the last 60 days of ceasefire, as Israel bombed and blew up every house and structure in these villages in the last 60 days. So many people could have been saved during this ceasefire if actually, the Lebanese military and or the UNIFIL, the United Nations peacekeeping troops here, delivered on their duty of entering these villages and looking for the remains of anybody that was killed and or somebody that was survived. One other thing that we need to know is that on Sunday is the funeral of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the former Secretary General of Hezbollah. There's going to be probably around 1 million people out in the streets. There's a huge funeral procession from the Olympic Stadium in Beirut to his new mausoleum that they're building for his grave beside the airport. Tens of thousands of international dignitaries and personalities are also arriving at the country. All the hotels are overbooked, basically. And so we will see on Sunday the actual, weight of what Hezbollah is in the country, even after this war. How much does Hezbollah have support? And I think, probably the estimate of 1 million people out in the street is going to be low, compared to what's going to appear on the streets that day.
Wow. So that funeral is going to take place. Okay, so that funeral is coming up. What are you expecting for Lebanon going forward in the way that, because I know you criticize the president who was effectively elected as a pawn of U.S. interests. What is your expectation of the government going forward in this sense? Do you have any level of optimism associated with the fact that a government has been created? Are you expecting a government to just be a pawn? What are your thoughts?
Well, we can look at what happened over the last week as examples of where this new government is going. So as everybody's preparing for this funeral, and there's hundreds of and thousands of people coming from outside the country, out of the blue, the new prime minister, Salam, who was the chief justice at the International Court of Justice, decided to ban Iranian flights from landing in Beirut. And he gave a lousy excuse, claiming that these Iranian airliners have sanctions on them, while these same airliners are landing in Berlin, in Paris, in Istanbul, in United Arab Emirates, in Qatar. So clearly he was, threatened by.
He'll be back. Let's give him a moment. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. You can do it. He'll be back in a moment. It's minor freeze. No issue. The word was great. I will bring him back when he unfreezes. Look, what he's referring to is that there's a new president in Lebanon. There hadn't been a president going on for like 2 or 3 years. And so they finally have a new government that is formed. The catch with that is the person who they put into that position just so happens to be, let's say, very close to Western interests. And so the belief is that with Hezbollah being undercut, subverted, that they were able to get a new president in that shows on some level the undercutting of Hezbollah. And so it's like, what does that government look like going forward now that they have, let's say, this new president that's in, now that they have a government that's been fully formed? What does Lebanon become in this? Where do they go politically? Syria has been undercut. You had a situation where a jihadist is effectively taking control of Syria. Iran has been removed from Syria. Russia is most likely going to be leaving. It's a new Middle East in real terms. I mean, it's not this tripart of Russia, Iran, Syria. Syria has been destroyed. And so that's no longer the case. And so it's like, what is this new Middle East that these guys are going to have to work through going forward? I don't know if anybody has an answer to that. As I pointed out, it's a new norm across the board whether it's with Ukraine, whether it's with Russia, and the U.S. seemingly coming to some kind of terms in order to resume diplomatic relations, and not just diplomatic relations, normalization of relations. There you are. Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry,
I'll just no, you're perfectly fine. I'll just talk to the audience. I knew you'd be back, but please continue.
Yeah, the computer just went out completely, and this is the second computer. So I think I keep on getting these Zionists keep on the other computer just was totally burnt last month, and this is the second one, and so they keep on hacking my equipment and trying to destroy it. Okay, so we were talking about the Lebanese government.
Yes.
And what I was saying is that, the excuse that was given about banning Iranian flights doesn't make sense. And what we saw is that led to demonstrations here in Lebanon and confrontations with the Lebanese military outside the airport where these demonstrations were happening, again, raising the tensions between the Lebanese people, the Lebanese military, and the new government. And these are all signals to where we're going. I believe the Lebanese government, new government, president and prime minister are going to try to appease the Israelis and the West as much as they can. But there's not much power in their hands. They don't have real control of the ground. The Lebanese military is really just a police force. And every time they fail to protect the Lebanese territory and the Lebanese population, whether it was in the north when the HTS was attacking from Syria last week, where the Lebanese tribes and clans had to fight off the HTS occupying Lebanese territory in the north while the Lebanese military just watched, or in the south, as we saw over the last few weeks with the Lebanese population breaking into their own villages with their bare bodies as the Lebanese military just watched. Those are all actually strengthening the position of resistance because the state and the military are failing to deliver on their duties. So I think, in the long run, and even on the short term, if the Lebanese military and the Lebanese government do not begin to deliver on their duties towards their territory and their population, Hezbollah is only going to get stronger. You're still on mute, Waiva.
Laith, man, I always appreciate these conversations. Laith Marouf, he is an award-winning multimedia producer and broadcaster and law consultant. You can follow Laith on Twitter at Laith Marouf, and you can also follow his content on Free Palestine TV. Definitely check him out. As you pointed out, there have been attacks on his equipment. Help him if you can. Laith, thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. See you soon, Jamal.
Have a good one. Be safe.